Welcome to the Double Broker Bounty Hunters Stop the Scam. Here are your hosts, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter, John Cantera, and Dispatch Kate, Caitlin Price. Another one bites the dust. Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Stop the Scam. We are here talking about insurance fraud this week. But before we get into all the fun that insurance has to offer, we've got a bunch of updates. First and foremost, Kate, my dear, how are you doing? How was your week? What is new?
I'm not sweltering in Texas.
That is definitely news.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. I'm in Indiana, and it feels so great up here.
Okay, well, that's good. Unfortunately, I have to break to our audience's hearts here because despite our efforts, working with Kate and trying to help her out with the Women in Logistics 2004 Influential Leader Award, I'm sorry to say Kate did not win. So all of our listeners who failed to vote, shame on you, first and foremost. Okay, but we do want to go ahead and give props out to the winner, Shadra Cook of By His Grace Solutions. Congratulations on winning this award, and more luck to everybody who was a finalist. I believe they're going to be sending Kate a nice little certificate and whatnot for her being a finalist, but she definitely deserved it, and you were robbed, my dear. You absolutely were robbed.
Hey, I'm sure Shadra is wonderful at what she does, and obviously deserved it. Is well deserved.
Fantastic. You're a true professional. I love that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get away from that, and let's get to the updates on some of the investigations we've been doing. Now, I got a post on my Reddit thread, which is trucking _scams. And it is from somebody who is affiliated with our favorite carrier, Mabe Logistics. Now, for those who haven't been following, Mabe Logistics and their predatory behaviors toward owner-operators have been springing from one organization to another. We know they went from Mabe Logistics to Raptor Transport to, is it Backwater now?
Yeah, Backwater.
Yeah. So if you hear any of these names, carriers, and you're looking for somebody to lease onto, stay away from them. Okay, because we have dozens of victims who never got paid by Sean Mabe, who owns all of these organizations. And we keep tracing him back through records with the Secretary of State for all these companies that he keeps creating as chameleons. And since DOT has started prosecuting chameleon carriers for some of the shady stuff they're doing, we are really hoping that we can bring their attention to Sean Mabe and get these carriers or get these owner-operators some level of justice. But Kate, why don't you talk a little bit about your interaction with this individual that made that post?
So we're not going to go naming names today, but this is somebody who has previously had some feedback on an older episode of ours from April, where we extensively discussed the current Mabe happenings up to that point. And she said, a lot of this info isn't correct. And I said, you're welcome to share. We would love to hear your side or anyone else's side. I've said from the beginning, I would like to hear from somebody who actually had a positive experience with that company, and I've gotten zero responses to that. So, pretty convinced that just doesn't exist. So, this individual, I said, they even sent me an email after watching that episode of the show. 4 of them. So Sean sent me an email, And then that person sent me an email, and then his dispatcher or recruiter or whoever they are also sent me some subsequent emails, to which I never responded. But in that email, this one particular person said, I know personally that he always pays his drivers. Okay, really interesting.
Well, it's contrary to everything we've heard.
Yeah. They also said that um, it was a lot of defending those behaviors and what was going on. So I never did respond to any of those emails, but when this particular Reddit thing was brought to my attention, I got on there and said, John and I have been covering this for months, since like January. You knew that this was happening. You've even taken the time out of your day to email me about it and to post uh, comments on our videos that that's not the case. So what's really going on? And they responded and said, I had no idea. And so I said, yeah, you did. I'm not buying that. So I don't know what's really going on there, but uh public
What? Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
public I guess information would lead me to believe that Sean was leased on to that person's company because his company was not established enough to run their own loads. So he had to lease on to another older authority, which he did, and it was that person's authority. So obviously, all the receivables had to go through their company and then be paid out to Sean, where Sean could pay the drivers. Well, Sean was getting paid for those loads by the person that he was leased onto and never paid the drivers. And again, this is all just what I've seen that's out there in the public. So things on like Reddit and wherever these happenings are posted, I guess. So take that for what it is.
Yeah, we take it with a grain of salt because now that this individual is claiming that they're starting a class action lawsuit, and now I wish my cat would go ahead and get off my shoulder now. Thank you very much. Uh, is starting a class action lawsuit against Sean Mabe for the havoc he has caused owner operators through his operation. Now, whether or not that actually comes to fruition, I don't know. I have invited this individual to call me so that we can more talk about this, but she has yet to take me up on it. So we will wait and see how that develops. And I got to tell you and this all leads into our guest for today. So bear with us for just a little bit more. We have been investigating a lot of these domestic scammers, and these domestic scammers are utilizing insurance to help perpetuate some of these scams, where at least insurance is a part of the scam. I was working with with an owner operator who was leased onto a company called Cordova ENT. And Cordova ENT apparently was bringing on these owner operators, was charging them premiums for the insurance at, let's see, what was it? It was $200 a week for a single, $300 a week for a team. And they were given a COI as proof that they were covered. Well, the COI was fake. The owner operator had a minor accident and went to file a claim with the insurance to find out that the insurance did not exist. So, in fact, the policy that was quoted in the COI was terminated 3 years prior. So, these people are doing everything they can to cut corners and to bilk owner operators out of money along the way. So, owner operators, if you are out there trying to find a carrier that's reliable, that you can partner with to be able to operate under their authority, investigate the hell out of them. Verify everything. Verify their insurance. Verify other drivers who are working with them. Talk to them. See if they're having any issues with their fuel cards. See if they're having any issues getting paid. you need to do your due diligence. Otherwise, you can wind up a victim of these domestic scammers. And the worst part is these domestic scammers have all of these details covered in their contracts. So technically, it's not illegal. It's just predatory. Well, the predatory stuff still it victimizes the owner operators. So please, please, please do your due diligence. And if you ever have any questions as to who you're working with, you can always contact Kate or myself, and we will be happy to take a look at your contract and see whether or not you're dealing with something fair. You can contact me at jcantera@vigilanttransport.com or kprice@rockdovefs.com. And this makes for the segue to go and introduce our guest. We have Drew Wilder with us from Vicarious Liability. Drew, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And now, you've said before that you may be an insurance expert, but you never actually worked in insurance. You were risk management, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what we're doing here today?
Well, I started off, as I said many times, with Viking Freight Systems. Started off on the dock, got into claims management, operations, and things of that nature. I was there for 7 years. Left there and went to work for a smaller regional carrier. We operated as a freight forwarder, local dredge, freight broker, and over the road. We did 11 Western states. There, I was in charge of safety, compliance, claims, certificate of insurance, etc. And because of all of those moving parts and so forth, it became clear to me after leaving a big operation like Viking, it was a different world. And so I reached out to some transportation freight attorneys, some individuals that were ICC practitioners, which that they were at that particular time. That's how the cargo claims process was handled, through those individuals. And so I got, I received a lot of training over the years. I got did my CPAC exam, 20 years ago. Went on to law school and got my master's of jurisprudence and so forth. And so that's that's in a nutshell. That's my background.
Okay, cool. You sent us a bunch of slides, which is great. And one of the reasons why we really wanted to do this episode was to help brokers and carriers try to come up with a quick way to better evaluate a carrier's insurance to make sure that you're actually using somebody who is in fact covered. I mean, we've already talked a little bit about Mave Logistics, my case with Cordova, and in fact, they didn't have any insurance. These are huge problems and huge issues of liability for brokers and shippers. And this is where everything just really goes off the rails, and is why this industry is costing an arm and a leg for everyone involved. So why don't you go ahead and walk us through what you typically deal with on a day-to-day basis when it comes to dealing with these policies, and what it is that ideally brokers should be doing in trying to review it. And then, because I know that takes a long time,
right,
what is the shortcut way to give them the best fighting chance of making sure they're selecting a good carrier to be able to haul their freight? You just let me know whenever you want me to pull up your slide deck, and I will.
We'll go. Well, hold on a minute. One of the things I would say is that, and we talked about this a little bit before, is when it comes to like a very expeditious way to do this, there just really isn't. To be honest with you, there's a process that people have to go through. I would say a little over a year ago, I did a post on LinkedIn and I talked about load boards and the pitfalls in dealing with load boards. And really, at the end of the day, I know that some shippers, freight brokers have to use load boards to get loads moved in just in time. I get it. But when you do that, you're pretty much hoping that nothing goes wrong. There's so many pitfalls to it that, again, you're just rolling the dice and hoping that everything goes correctly. When it comes to say COI monitoring companies and onboarding companies, I view those a bit differently. And the reason being is that when you're dealing with an organization similar to one of those, one of the benefits that they provide is that they are a great tool to in the fight against double brokering. That I have to go ahead.
You're talking about RMIS,
Right.
Highway, MCP, right?
Those
Okay.
guys.
I just wanted to be. I just wanted to clarify.
Right. Those guys. I would say that that's a way to quickly determine that there's evidence of coverage for a motor carrier that you're going to hire. Okay, because they have certificates that are already been onboarded, and you can look at it. So that's a way if you just got to know very quickly whether at minimum the motor carrier has cargo, the auto liability coverage. That's a way to do it. Another thing that those services provide is that they're a great tool for exposing double brokering, that fighting the fraud, and it's a way to get that truck dispatched quickly. However, verifying evidence of insurance versus vetting coverage, those are two different things. Okay, and that's a situation where it can't be done quickly. When I was with Far West Freight, as I said, we operated as a freight forwarder and a freight broker. And I was reviewing and signing contracts all day, and there was a lengthy process to it. There was just no way getting around it. And I can tell you that there were times where, we had a $30,000 claim, we had a $100,000 claim, $75,000 claim. If it wouldn't have been for the things that the compliance team did, along with the other processes, we probably would have wound up paying those losses. And so there's a method to it. So what I would say to people is simply this. If you're a freight broker, freight forwarder, et cetera, shipper, you need to sit down and assess what your risk management appetite is going to be, right? And if you want to take chances, you need to understand the result of that and develop your strategy from there. Is what I would say about how to get to where you would be. Could you pull up the first slide?
All right, let me bring that up.
Yeah. Now, next one. I already talked about that, so let's go to the next one. Okay. Now, when I talk about here on this slide, what we're talking about, we're getting into the insurance fraud portion of it now. And I just have a few examples of what would be considered material misrepresentation, which would be false statements or misleading information. In other words, if the insurance company would have had the correct information, they may or may not have issued a policy. If they did issue the policy, it might have cost more than what they actually quoted it for. Go to the next page.
Would that be tantamount to carriers falsifying their COIs or things along those nature?
Well, it would come down to motor carriers when they're giving the information that the insurance agent or the insurance broker needs, they falsify it. In other words, they'll say, like in my next slide here, motor carrier may say, it may be communicated to the underwriter that the motor carrier is running a series of Sprinter trucks when they're actually running tractor trailers. It may be communicated that they're running 11 Western when they're running 48 states. Things of that nature will actually determine what kind of coverage you get or don't get, and it is considered fraud. That's on the motor carrier side. Now, in this slide here, you can see where I have Phillipsburg, New Jersey, truck stop. This was actually a case, I think it was like $20 million involved, but this was actually a case that happened a few years ago where an investigator, I believe, for an insurance company figured it out. What was going on in this particular case, it was the insurance broker themselves that were committed to fraud. And what they would do is that they would go out and get these owner-operators a rate. If the rate was too high, they would tell the owner-operators, hey, look, you can just park your truck at this truck stop, and we'll use that address. Well, some of these insurance ratings, they're rated on zone and where you're at. And in this particular case, I think that some of these, like there was like a $20,000 to $30,000 difference in what the policy would have been if I'm correct on it. But there was a lot of money that was lost. So what happened in this scheme is that the insurance agent was actually paying the truck stop owner a kickback. The truck stop only had stalls for 40 parking. They had only 40 parking stalls. But when you look at the insurance that had been written, it was for 400 tractors.
Holy Moses.
Exactly. Couldn't park them all there. Okay. So the fraud happens on both ends. Sometimes it happens from strictly the motor carrier withholding information. Sometimes insurance brokers, insurance agent does it. It happens both ways.
I have a question.
So,
Yes.
Go ahead, Kate.
So when someone, I guess this could get really interesting because, as we all know, there's a whole lot of foreign entities that get an operating authority within the U.S. So when somebody that is physically here in the U.S. incorporates their company out of state, is that like where they don't, like there's somebody who, okay, so MABE, the company that we were talking about earlier, they are out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's where they are physically located.
Right.
But with their second chameleon carrier, well, I guess it would have been their first chameleon carrier, Raptor, they had that business incorporated in Wyoming.
Right.
So does the insurance, is the insurance written out of Wyoming or Dallas-Fort Worth?
Without having more information, I would know. What I can tell you is this: when it comes to one piece of one tool that you have at your disposal to fight this fraud, or as a remedy when it happens sometimes, is that there are state statutes across the country. I think every state except for 4 have statutes in place that specifically address insurance fraud and certificates of insurance. And I can just tell you that I know that in the state of Washington, and I believe Tennessee and Texas might be the same, but I know in the state of Washington that the statute here is very clear. It doesn't matter where the insurance agent is located. It doesn't matter what state he or she's located in. If the certificate holder or the motor carrier is located in the state of Washington statute rules.
Okay.
So, that I can tell you, but to get deeper into, to answer your question, deeper than that, I wouldn't be able to do that without having more information.
Okay.
Yeah. But can we get to the next slide? Now, as you mentioned, John, on this slide, we talk about, this misrepresentation can result in coverage being denied. Okay. So, that's problematic. And you mentioned these other drivers that had these accidents and there was no coverage for them. So those are the pitfalls in respects to, what could happen as a result of this misrepresentation, whether it's, from an insurance agent or broker, or whether the motor carrier did it. It's just a fallout.
So who pays for it in these situations?
Well,
who's required to pay for it?
Well, it depends on who did it, right? Now we're getting into the litigation piece, which could take forever, right? It could take forever. So who wants to do that, right? But when it gets to that point, you do want to have a remedy, right? You do want to have a remedy. So I do know. If it's proven that the insurance broker did it, then depending on what state you're in, there's case law that clearly states that the insurance broker, that agency that he or she works for, is going to be liable for the loss, right? So they're going to have to pay it. The catch is this: say for instance, if it's an insurance brokerage firm that's big, like a Gallagher or Marsh or Aon or someone like that, or McGriff, they have the money. But the smaller guys, that one-man operation, they may not have the money. And I do know of a few situations prior to COVID, where this very thing happened, and we had a clear case against the insurance broker. He admitted that he did some things he shouldn't have done. Right. Problem is he had no insurance. He had no E&O. And we wanted to pursue it, but our client didn't. So I really can't tell you where it would have went. But that would have been the route that we would have taken. Now, if it's an insurance agent, on the other hand, and they do something that they shouldn't do, and it is proven that that it was misrepresentation, at that point, the insurance company themselves would be liable for misrepresentation. So it's really going to depend.
Fair enough. It's just a huge challenge.
It's a huge
challenge in trying to decipher a lot of these things. I get a lot of calls from carriers who wind up in bad situations. They're like, "How am I liable for this? It's not my fault."
Right.
And I was like, "Well, depends on how you set up your insurance to begin with. What coverages do you have? Let's see the actual policy. There's 140 some odd pages." I was like, "I know, but you need to go through that to see what you're actually covered for." Right. I know whenever, as a dispatcher, I book a lot of carriers through MCP, RMIS,
right,
and they have an exclusions page. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult a lot of times for dispatchers to identify exclusions between different policies for the carriers that they take care of. Right. I've got a cheat sheet for mine, right. But I seriously doubt all of the dispatch services out there actually do this. Mm-hmm. So at that point, does then the dispatch service who fails to acknowledge that there's an exemption on a specific type of cargo, does it then fall on them? I mean, have you ever heard of cases like that?
Well, you know what? I actually, not actual cases, but I have heard from a few attorneys that say that there's a trend going now to where they've seen a few, plaintiffs assert, claims against, say, the shipper, not the shipper, but the freight broker, freight forwarder, for not properly vetting the COI. To my knowledge, none of these have actually got, like in front of a judge for a ruling, but these are things that are being asserted at this point. And I think that as, attorneys start winning more victories in respects to negligent entrustment, the only avenue at that point is going to be vicarious liability and things like this. And so, it's going to be, the blame's going to fall somewhere, right? And so, I'm sorry.
If you can define the concept of vicarious liability, I know I personally did not hear of that until about 3 months ago. So, right. Can you describe what that concept is?
Well, I'll just give you an example. Like, say, for instance, in a case where, say, you hire a motor carrier, right? Or it could be a construction company, for instance, right? Even though you're hiring them to do the job, you're still the principal. So in certain situations, you can be liable for the things that they did or did not do if they aren't qualified.
Okay, that makes sense. So from a construction standpoint, if the general contractor fails to pay a sub, then it can still fall back on whoever originally hired the general contractor.
May or may not, but I was really looking at it from more of an injury type perspective, right? But those things probably could come into play as well, depending on how the contract was set up.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to break your rhythm there.
Oh, no problem.
We get these kinds of legal questions a lot. Kate and I are not attorneys, but we do the best we can to try to interpret and help people try to figure out what the right direction is. We try to steer them towards attorneys who can help them. Right. But, of course, the more education we have in this, the happier we are.
Right. Now, I want to just be clear to the audience. I'm not an attorney. I graduated from University of Washington School of Law. I have my master's in jurisprudence. So I am qualified to do risk assessments and cite case law and so forth. But I do not practice law. So I just want to be clear.
Appreciate that clarification for everyone there.
Right. So can we go to the next slide?
Yep.
Okay, so to really get into the questions you guys have had up to this point, to get into the meat of this thing when it comes to, and you alluded to it yourself, John. You talked about like these policies, right? And they could be 146 pages long, right? And then you may have commercial general liability that the motor carrier may have. That's an important piece too, because depending on what type of coverage is there, it could take that coverage could apply to cargo claims. It could apply to a vehicle accident. So now you're not only are you looking at the auto liability policy, but you might also need to look at the commercial general liability policy as well. So this is just how we do it, and what I recommend that people do if they're going to do it on their own, right? Is that the first thing that you want to do is start working on building a dedicated motor carrier owner operator base. That takes time, right? And what I mean by doing that, yeah, they're easily identified. Yeah, you could easily identify motor carriers or owner operators that operate in the lanes that your freight goes in. And so that could be done not overnight, but that's easier done than the other piece. The other piece of it, when we start talking about the insurance component of it, at that point, I'm just not a fan personally. I'm not a fan of sitting down and trying to read through 140 pages of a policy, or the endorsements, because for one, what if you miss something? You're taking on something that you shouldn't take on. What if you miss something? You're reading the policy on page 6, the coverage is there. On page 12, they've taken it back. Okay, so what if you miss something? In addition to that, I've had a few situations where when one of my team members was actually reviewing a COI, she caught a few red flags. At that point, she went back to the insurance broker and asked a few questions, asked for a revised cert. We couldn't get one. And so, this conversation, 2 or 3 emails went back and forth, and it was clear to us that there was a problem. Well, this was a pretty big account for our customer, and they didn't want to. They wanted it resolved if at all possible. So the end result is that they asked us to read the policy endorsements, the whole policy, the declarations, everything. So I agreed, but I said on one condition. I said they had outside, they didn't have in-house counsel, they had outside counsel. So we said, okay, on one condition, you have your outside counsel read it as well. I, in turn, had an experienced freight broker that had worked, for a motor carrier, owned his own trucking company for a few years, and was actually, a broker, an insurance broker. So he had a wealth of experience as well. We all three read this policy that was given to us, and we all concluded that there was a problem. We didn't quite know, but with the other things that we knew about this, we knew there was a problem. I actually get back to the insurance broker. This was senior level management guy. And I says, hey man, what's going on here? We know what you gave us isn't right. And his response to me was, you're right. I was hoping that you guys didn't catch it. I was like, where's the real policy? He says, I can't give it to you. Can't allow it to be in the public sphere. That actually happened.
That sounds contrary to the public good. I thought insurance was supposed to support the public good.
I'm not saying that it doesn't. I don't know what he was withholding or what he didn't want us to see, but he clearly would not give us the policy. So we went through all of that to get to where all we learned was what we already knew before we read the policy, right? And again, but even if that wouldn't have happened, all the man hours that it took to do it, it's just not feasible to say that you're going to look at every, because again, you look at the declarations, that's not telling you what the exclusions are. So you got to look at it all. And if you're just looking at exclusions from a motor carrier's policy, but it's on a blanket COI, And I'm not a fan of that. If you have a COI that this cert holder is not you, it's a third party that may have requested a cert for you. I'm not a fan of that. I'm just not. I feel like that if me personally, if I'm going to be in a situation where there's a claim and it needs to be paid and it's a high claim, we all know that the motor carrier isn't going to have the money to do it. Unless they're one of the big guys, they're simply not going to have the money to do it. So the only recourse you're going to have is to go, you have to hope that maybe the insurance agent or broker made a mistake, right? And if they did, now you have a recourse against them. But you got to be able to prove that you relied on that certificate to your detriment. And I just don't, to me personally, to look at a blanket COI that was just requested at the beginning of the year for everybody that wants to look at it, I wouldn't hedge my bets on that, if that makes sense. I just wouldn't. So with that being said, what I would do, and what we do, and we tell people that if you want to go with us, it's going to take a year to fix this. We're not going to fix it in a day. There's no point in pretending like we can, because it can't be done. And I haven't heard anybody say yet that they can do it that quickly, right? So the thing is that what you want to do is you want to have a documented conversation. In other words, you want to have a conversation with the motor carrier and their insurance agent. And that conversation needs to be documented. You want to confirm, okay, you want to talk about the lanes that they're going to operate in. You want to talk about the equipment that's required. You got to get into identifying the cargo, not just FAK. You need to talk, if you're hauling perishables, refrigerated goods, foods, electronics, anything that would possibly have more exclusions or limitations, liability, all of those things need to be discussed, right? All those things need to be discussed. And at that point, the agent, if you think about it, who's the most qualified person to answer that question? It certainly isn't me, any of you guys. It's the agent that procured the policy. Would that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So you ask those questions, right? You get those questions answered. So now you know what your exclusions will be. And I want to also say this, guys. I often hear people talk about, well, I did this, this, and this. Why wasn't my claim paid? Well, I'll tell you why your claim wasn't paid. It on the front end, I can say why it wasn't paid, because, if you ask me today, if you move a shipment and you tell me what it is, if there's a claim, is the claim going to be paid? No, no. It hadn't happened yet, right? It hadn't happened yet. Claims are going to be paid or denied based on the merit of the claim. So really what you're looking for is that, okay, if you need TARP coverage for the shipments that you're moving, you want to know that TARP coverage is included on the policy, right? So that's how you break it down, and you do it with every single one you have. When you go through that process and you get into next year's renewal, it should be much smoother. Meaning, you request a cert, you ask whether there were any changes in the policy, and you go from there. But me personally, there's no, doing it any other way than that. You're taking shortcuts, and what happens is going to happen. That's my 2 cents.
I mean, this is so much to take in. All of the work that's involved in trying to verify whether or not a broker has sufficient protections to deal with their liability concerns. You're talking about an insane number of hours. Now, we all know that this industry moves at lightning speed.
Right.
So what can you suggest to brokers as their best chance of being able to ensure that they are doing the right thing for their customers and protecting their own liability issues?
Well, I would say a combination of things. One, on the front end, is that request certificates of insurance via email. Don't accept one that wasn't provided to you directly from the insurance agent. That's what I would say. Okay, when you're sending that email to the insurance agent or broker, be very specific as to what the contract is, what they're doing for you, those type things. Just try to be very as specific as you can, right? And you want that cert to come directly back from them. And at that point, it comes down to knowing what to look for on the cert. Say, for instance, trailer physical damage. We see them on certs every day, the word trailer physical damage. Well, that could mean non-dome. It can mean trailer interchange, etc. And so each one of those is a different level of liability. It can be scheduled. So, the word trailer physical damage by itself just doesn't work. I wouldn't accept that. You look at a cert, if you see the words contingent on it, that might be a sign that, okay, is this really primary coverage or whether it's contingent coverage? So there's just some things that, you're going to need to look at. It's a learning curve. But I would say that at step one, if the only thing that, if time is of essence to you, which it is in this industry, send an email to the insurance agent, requesting the cert in your name, state what it's for. If they don't respond to you within a couple of minutes, call them yourself to make sure that they send you the cert back so you can get the load moving. If you look at the cert and you have some questions, email them your questions. Don't call them because, I would say call them and ask them to respond to your email, because a verbal conversation, I'll tell you anything. But if it goes sideways, I'm not going to admit I said it. So that's what I would say if you have no other choice. When it comes to the first thing I talked about, when engaging the agents and so forth, this is not a situation where, say the train's going to stop at the station. You just got to keep moving, right? So, as you are building that motor carrier base, you're still going to have to take some risks because you didn't get in the situation that you're in overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight. So you still got to move this freight. You move it the same way you've been moving it. But what you do is that you constantly work on the things I talked about. And within a year's time, you're going to see that you're going to be in a better situation than you were in. And I'll give you another example is that about a month ago, a person reached out to me because they had a cargo claim that had been denied. Okay, and they weren't really doing much in the way of compliance. They really weren't, and they certainly weren't doing the things that we were talking about, right? That we talked about. Okay, so we went through this process, but even looking at the claim, it's an $80,000 claim.
Ooh.
$80,000, okay? And the insurance company isn't going to pay it. I looked at it. They are not liable for it. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but the insurance company is not liable for it. And they have a judgment against the person involved has a judgment against the motor carrier, but they're, how are you going to get money for that, right? This is something, like I said, happened a couple of months ago. So what I say is that, again, like I said before, you have to realistically weigh your options, and you have to say to yourself, are you really going to want to have to face, the losses on an $80,000 claim or whatever that entails if and when it happens, or is it worth putting the time and resources into doing it properly over time? And like I said, within the year or so, it's going to be a seamless process. It won't be fixed. It has to be constantly managed. But all of the time you put in on the front end, it'll pay dividends, a year and a half into it. But it's either or. You do nothing and you hope nothing goes wrong. And when it does, you're faced with, this loss. Now, of course, as a freight broker, would you be liable for the cargo claim? No. But what if your customer is just upset or pissed off now, don't want to use you? Those things happen. So, sure. So you have to decide where you want to be, right? But again, it's like this: when it comes to compliance, whether it's safety, meaning minimizing vehicle accidents, on-the-job injuries, cargo claims, whatever. At the end of the day, when you take the shortcuts, you do it the quickest way possible. The risks are there. The risks are there.
Right.
Now, it just comes down to whether it happens to you or not.
One of the things that you mentioned was you think that it's most efficient for a broker to make that contact with the insurance agent to get that information direct from them.
Right.
So you would not recommend a broker to ask the dispatcher or the carrier then to get a COI with their information as a certificate holder, and then just rely on that as the end all be all.
Well, I'll tell you what I know has happened a few times where I've been asked to be a subject matter expert for a few cases like this. What happened was that a loss occurred. The cert holder was relying on the cert, and what they found out was that the motor carrier made it all up, just fabricated the cert, right? We've had situations where, and this still happens to this day, where we'll get a cert from our client saying they got it from the motor carrier, they got it from the freight broker. We'll in turn, all we use that cert for is the information. We look at the email address, right? So we know who to send a request to. So we send the request to the insurance broker or agent, and the response we get back is that, hey, they haven't been insured with us for 6 months.
Now, this is a systemic problem on the carrier side, based on two things.
Right.
One, the insanely high cost of insurance. Okay, so carriers trying to save money in one form or another. And two, the insanely low rates that carriers are getting paid in this particular market. Now, how would you try to reconcile and try to help a carrier identify what would be a good way to try to save money if they're trying to save money on insurance? Clearly, falsifying insurance, committing full-on fraud is not the answer. What would you recommend to a carrier to try to help them try to save a little bit of money on their insurance?
Well, I'll tell you, man, I don't get in the middle of that. I'm not an insurance broker or an agent, and I feel that's a conflict of interest. I just don't get into that. Yeah. This is what I do.
Fair enough. This
is what I do. This is what I do. This is what I will do. If a motor carrier was to contact me and say that they weren't happy with their current insurance agent, at that point, I would recommend them to someone, right, that I know is good. But as far as, just making blank, I just wouldn't do that. In fact, a few of my customers, they've even asked me to be in meetings with them and their insurance agent. I'm like, no, that's not my place. I'm not sitting at that table because that's, I just think that's out of bounds, if that makes sense.
No, that's fair.
Right.
That's fair. I can appreciate you trying to draw lines in the sand as to where your involvement lies.
Right.
For those of us who are neck deep in the middle of it, like Kate and myself. I mean, I know for my carriers, I request COIs on their behalf to send to brokers. Now, I always request that the agent send it directly to the broker, so the broker sees it came from the agent. Right. If I have to generate a COI in, say, Progressive's portal, I have the portal send a direct email to the broker. So at least they know it came from an insurance company. But that's the only assurance I can give a broker as a dispatcher. That a policy exists. So what else do us as dispatchers or even carriers need to say to a broker to help reassure them that what they're getting is valid stuff? Is there anything that a carrier can say to them?
Well, I put this on the broker, not the carrier. The broker needs to, again, if they want a cert, which all of them do, they need to be emailing the motor carrier's insurance agent or broker requesting that cert and making clear what it's for.
I was going to say, it sounds like a lot of this could be mitigated just by the broker requiring to be listed as a certificate holder and them taking the initiative to get that certificate holder.
Being the broker as the requester versus a dispatcher or the carrier being the requester.
Yes.
Right, exactly. Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah. I don't. Well, okay. Explain to me kind of where. Okay, you're operating as a dispatch service, right?
Hmm.
Right.
Okay. And so I get what you guys are doing. I get that point. But I guess so. So the broker, I'm kind of. I would, me personally, I would want whoever the motor carrier was. I want a cert from the motor carrier with my name on it. That's what I want.
Hmm.
That's what I want.
Okay, and
That's
we
what I want.
do that quite a bit.
Right.
We are regularly asked to provide COIs with the broker listed as a certificate
Right.
holder,
Right.
which we do.
Right.
And again, I know I personally, I'm always trying to get the insurance agent to send that direct to the broker so that there's no
And I would.
appearance of impropriety.
I would.
But I have seen cases
Mhm.
where dispatchers or carriers
Mhm.
are being asked to just put that information into the bottom left hand corner of that accord form.
Mhm.
But that's considered fraud, right? That
That's
has to
considered
be
fraud.
done
You can't
by
you
the
can't
insurance agent and not by a dispatcher using Adobe to fill that in. Correct?
Well, first of all, two things. One, it's like in the state of Washington, it's against state statute, so you've broken the law. Second thing is that even if it wasn't against state statute, the only individuals that are authorized to speak on behalf of that policy is the insurance company, insurance agent, or insurance broker. Nothing anybody else says matters.
Even the carrier.
Even the carrier. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Okay, so then the carrier is not expected to have full knowledge of what is entailed in the policy. It is the agent and the insurance broker who are who are responsible for that knowledge.
Well, some carriers do have full knowledge, right, of what's in their
policy. You'd think they should.
Okay. Well, most don't. Most don't, right?
Of course, they don't.
Right. And so again, just from my perspective, right? My seat.
Sure.
I'm saying, I'd rather engage my time dealing with the individual to actually place the policy versus the motor carrier.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that's because again, no matter what they say, they could be right. If they're wrong, it doesn't really matter. That's yeah, they may have breached the contract with you, but there's no insurance for that. So again, me personally, I'm just a fan of direct contact with the insurance agents because I'll tell you, it's been my experience when you have that direct contact with them and you're very specific as to what you're looking for. At that point, the whole communication becomes more transparent. They'll tell you things that they wouldn't. We get phone calls from agents telling us we're not going to issue cert. Tell us why. They won't put it in an email, but they'll tell us over the phone. We've gotten certs in the past where we'll get it. 3 hours later, the actual agent's calling us saying, "I got to rescind that cert. I found out it was issued. Blah blah blah." And yeah, exactly. So you're just by this email communication and you're bringing about a level of transparency. Now, I'll also will say this. If you're in a situation where you're not familiar with who this insurance broker agent is, say, for instance, they just got a one-man operation, you're not feeling good about it, you need to make some phone calls, right? Actually call them, make sure you're talking to a live person in the United States, look at their website, make sure everything adds up, right? But at the end of the day, the last piece of it is that whatever it is that you relied on in regards to accepting that cert, make sure you got it in writing.
It's always about what's in writing, isn't it?
Always about what's in writing.
Drew, we're coming up towards the end of our hour. Is there any final thoughts, recommendations, plugs, or anything that you want to throw out there for everybody?
Well, hey, I would just hey, thanks again for having me on. And if there's anyone that needs any information about this, feel free to just DM me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Drew Singleton Wilder. You can just DM me, and if there's anything I can do to help you, I certainly will.
And there's his email too there, folks, if you ever want to see that. Drew3@vlrmgt.com.
Hold that back up. I'm going to send him an email.
Oh, you want to throw that back up again? There you go.
Drew3@vlrmgt.com. Oh, typo.
If anyone needs us, of course, by all means, hit me up with a comment, even after the show, and I'll pass the information on. Happy to help in any way we can. Insurance is a very complicated topic, not just for carriers, but also for brokers and for shippers. What is actually covered, what is not, who pays the bill is always a question that we're all going to be asking for eons and eons to come,
Right.
In this highly litigious market that we operate in.
Right.
Again, it's nice to have experts like Drew around to try to help guide people through some of this process. As he has said, and our caveat exists as well, we're not attorneys, we try to put information out to help. So please, if you ever do wind up in a situation where you have to deal with legal stuff, by all means, please retain an attorney and give them all the details that you need to try to manage your case. But in the meantime, we are happy to help in any way we can. Drew, myself, or Kate, we're very knowledgeable, but it does not mean we know everything.
I would say that. I second that.
take everything with a grain of salt out there, because you just don't know who's saying stuff just to be a talking head,
Yes.
or who thinks that they know everything just because that's how they think their world works.
Right.
Let's see, a couple comments coming in. Jeez. Yeah, nice, Axel. Nice, Axel. And Axel is also wants to make sure that you are shaking these guys down to make sure that we get these guys all squared away. Thanks for watching, Axel. Appreciate it, buddy. Again, Drew, thank you so much for coming on. Really do appreciate it. We'd love to have you back at some point in the future. If you have some new things coming on, please stay in touch with us. We'd love to hear it. Kate, you got any closing thoughts?
No, I'm sure more things will emerge from Mabe, the guy who's making a stupid amount of money off drivers by not paying them.
Now, we know for a fact Mabe is not the only ones, okay? There are tons of them out there. Just pay attention to what you're doing and make sure you get a professional opinion before you sign a contract. Oh, and by the way, folks, I don't care who you are. I don't care if the person you're going to business with is your own brother. Make sure there's a contract.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Don't do anything without a contract.
Yep.
Don't move a load without a rate confirmation.
Yep.
Don't move anything without a BOL. If you stick to these basic rules, you minimize some of the issues you come across. And boy, we see it all the time.
One last thing. If there's anybody out there that doesn't have a contract that they're currently using that a transportation attorney did for them, DM me. I can point you in the direction of someone that can help you. And in fact, I have the template. All he asks is that prior to you use it to get a hold of him, because depending on where you operate, statutes may be different and so forth. But I'll certainly send it to anybody that would like it.
Much appreciated. All right, folks, please remember to like and subscribe to our channel so that way you can stay up to date on any future content and notifications that we put out. We do put out a lot of stuff that's very timely when we come across new scams. If you ever have any issues or concerns, make sure you contact myself at jcantera, vigilanttransport.com, or you can get Kate at kprice@rockdovefs.com. As you all know, we are here live every Monday, 5 p.m. Central, on Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. And coming soon, we are going to be part of the Lounge Media Group. So all of the platforms that Lounge Media Group sits on, we will be broadcasting live on all of their platforms as well. So please make sure you stay safe out there. And whatever you do, don't let scammers take you for a ride. We'll see you next week.